You probably think you know the story of Narcissus, right? Like the ultimate classic myth of vanity.
Right, the guy who falls in love with his own reflection.
Exactly. The gorgeous guy who goes to a lake, falls so madly in love with his reflection that he eventually just falls in and drowns. I mean, it is basically the textbook definition of self-obsession.
Yeah, it's a very straightforward cautionary tale, a binary lesson, really, like, don't be too full of yourself or it will be your undoing. Clean and simple.
But then you read Oscar Wilde's version of the myth, and suddenly, well, that simple lesson gets turned completely upside down.
Oh, it really does.
Because in Wilde's version, after Narcissus drowns, the forest nymphs, the Oreads, they come to the lake and they find the lake weeping. It has actually transformed from a lake of fresh water into a jug of salty tears.
Which, initially makes total sense. You'd think the lake is mourning this beautiful boy who just died in its waters.
Right. The nymphs say, well, of course you're crying, he was so beautiful. But the lake stops them. The lake says, wait, Narcissus was beautiful.
The nymphs are just so confused at this point.
Totally. They're like, you of all people should know. He looked at his reflection in your waters every single day. And here's the mind-bending twist. The lake says, I weep for Narcissus, but I never noticed that he was beautiful. I weep because each time he knelt beside my banks, I could see in the depths of his eyes my own beauty reflected.
It's such a brilliant pivot. It completely shifts the center of gravity of the story. Suddenly, it's not just about a boy looking at himself. It's about the environment, the universe itself, seeking its own reflection.
It is a profound little story.
Yeah, and it just so happens to be the prologue to the source material for today's deep dive. We are exploring excerpts from Paulo Coelho's massively influential book, The Alchemist, or Santiago, in the Turkish translation we are working from today.
And it's fascinating how this book actually mirrors its own philosophy. I mean, before writing it, Coelho was a theater director, an actor, a songwriter. He lived this wandering, seeking life before putting pen to paper.
Right, he really lived it. And the result was a book that resonated so deeply it became a global phenomenon. We're talking about selling over 100 million copies across 150 countries.
In 66 languages. It's staggering.
It is a monumental piece of literature. But what makes it so resonant is the core philosophy it presents. It isn't just a story, it's actually a framework for decision-making.
Which brings us to our mission today. This deep dive is a roadmap for navigating that terrifying, exhilarating journey between the reality you currently live in and the dreams you harbor deep down. We are going to explore the philosophy of the personal legend, the hidden dangers of over-intellectualizing your life, and how to actually read the subtle signs the world leaves for you.
And this exploration starts with a protagonist who is living a very comfortable, very predictable life.
Right, we meet Santiago. He's an Andalusian shepherd, and he's got it all figured out, at least on the surface. He knows his sheep, he has a heavy coat to keep him warm, a book he can trade for another book when he's done.
And a crush on a merchant's daughter. Right.
Exactly. In a town he visits once a year. It's safe. But he's haunted. He keeps having this recurring dream where a child takes him by the hand and leads him to hidden treasure at the Egyptian pyramids.
That dream is the disruption. It's basically the universe knocking on his door, and it leads him to an encounter in a town square with an old man named Melchizedek, who reveals himself to be the king of Salem.
Okay, and this is where things get really interesting.
Yeah, because Melchizedek introduces Santiago and the reader to the central concept of the entire source material, the Quiché Menkabé, or the personal legend.
The personal legend. It's that one thing you have always wanted to accomplish. But Melchizedek gives Santiago a massive warning here. He warns him about the world's greatest lie.
Right. And according to the old king, the world's greatest lie is the belief that at a certain point in our lives, we lose control of what is happening to us, and our lives become entirely controlled by fate.
It's the surrender of our agency.
Exactly. It's giving up.
I want to pause on that for a second because Melchizedek points to a guy selling popcorn in the town square to make his point. He tells Santiago that when this popcorn seller was young, he wanted to travel, just like Santiago.
But he didn't.
No. He chose to buy a popcorn cart instead, with the plan to save up for years and maybe, eventually, go to Africa for a month when he's old. And why? Because society respects a stable popcorn vendor more than a wandering shepherd. A vendor has a roof over his head. People want their daughters to marry vendors, not shepherds.
It's the gravitational pull of societal expectation. I mean, the popcorn vendor literally traded his personal legend for social approval.
It is so easy to fall into this trap in your own life. Like, you stay in a secure, soul-crushing corporate job that you tolerate.
Right, just to pay the bills.
Yeah, exactly. Rather than taking the terrifying leap to start that business you constantly dream about. And it's all because society values the perceived stability of a salary. You basically buy the popcorn cart instead of walking the desert.
Melchizedek understands that human nature leans toward that comfort. That's why he forces Santiago to commit. He doesn't just hand over the secret to finding the treasure for free.
No, he really makes him pay for it.
He does. He demands 1/10 of Santiago's flock of sheep before he will give him the advice he needs.
Which honestly feels like a shakedown. I mean, Santiago even tries to offer him 1/10 of the future treasure instead. Like, hey, I'll pay you when I get it.
But Melchizedek refuses. And the underlying mechanism here is crucial. He explains that if you promise something you do not yet possess, you destroy your drive to actually achieve it.
Oh, wow. That makes a lot of sense.
Right. If Santiago promises future treasure, he hasn't lost anything today. He can always just give up. But by giving up 1/10 of his actual physical livelihood, his sheep, he has skin in the game, he has made a sacrifice.
So it changes his mindset.
Completely.
Right.
The act of sacrifice fundamentally alters your psychology, forcing you to move forward because you can no longer go back to the way things were.
It's the ultimate commitment device. And before they part ways, the old king gives Santiago these two stones, Urim and Thummim, one black, one white. They are meant to help him make decisions when he can't read the signs himself. They represent the universe's guidance. So Santiago takes the leap, he sells his flock, he leaves his comfort zone, and he takes a boat to Tangier in Africa.
He fully embraces his personal legend.
But let me play devil's advocate for a second here, because what happens next is just brutal. Almost immediately after arriving, he is robbed blind by an Arabic-speaking boy he thought was a friend.
Yeah, a really harsh wake-up call.
It is. He is left stranded in a foreign port, not speaking the language, with absolutely nothing to his name except his book and those two stones. So how does this make sense? The old king just promised him that when you really want something, the whole universe conspires to help you achieve it. Santiago takes the leap and immediately gets robbed. Isn't that a massive contradiction? Like, is this philosophy just pushing toxic positivity and then failing its own test?
I see why it looks that way. I really do. But if we dig into the underlying logic, it's actually the exact opposite of toxic positivity. What's fascinating here is that the universe doesn't just hand out rewards, it tests your conviction.
Okay, so the robbery was a test.
Exactly. The old king called it beginner's luck when
Right.
things go well initially, just to draw you in. But the journey itself requires proving your worth. Why? Because achieving your personal legend isn't just about getting the gold at the end. It's about the transformation you undergo to become the person capable of holding that gold.
Right.
Santiago is stripped of his identity as a shepherd and forced to learn what the text calls a language without words through sheer adversity.
Right, he literally has to survive. So he climbs this steep, desolate hill in Tangier and finds work with a crystal merchant. And he stays there for almost a year, just cleaning crystal. But he doesn't just survive, he innovates.
He really turns the place around.
He does. He convinces the reluctant merchant to build a display case outside to attract customers. Then he comes up with the brilliant idea to serve traditional mint tea in the crystal glasses. People love it, and the dying shop completely comes back to life.
This section of the source material is such a brilliant character study in contrast. You have Santiago, who is working tirelessly to fund his journey to the pyramids, and then you have the crystal merchant. And the merchant also has a personal legend.
Right, he wants to go to Mecca.
Yes. He wants to go to the holy city of Mecca. It is the fifth pillar of his faith. He has dreamed of it his entire life.
But then, when he finally has enough money from the booming tea business, he outright refuses to go.
And his reasoning is utterly tragic. The merchant confesses that dreaming of Mecca is the only thing keeping him alive. It's what allows him to endure the miserable, repetitive routine of his daily life. He is terrified that if he actually achieves his dream, he will have no reason left to live.
He is using his dream as an emotional crutch. I mean, he prefers the fantasy to the reality.
Yes. And the text makes a profound observation here. Every blessing ignored becomes a curse.
Wow.
The merchant recognizes that Santiago has expanded his horizons, showing him what's possible. But because the merchant refuses to step into that possibility, he will now actually feel worse than before. He knows he can achieve his dream, and he knows he won't.
That is a terrifying place to be. It's a huge warning sign for anyone listening.
Yeah.
But Santiago escapes that trap. He takes his earnings, decides not to go back to being a shepherd, and buys his way onto a caravan crossing the Sahara Desert to Egypt. Now, this brings up a new problem. How do you actually learn the rules of the world you're venturing into? Because it brings us to a clash of two completely different learning styles in the desert.
Right, because on this caravan, he meets an Englishman who is just obsessed with alchemy.
Like deeply obsessed.
Very much so. He has spent 10 years, and a significant portion of his fortune, reading incredibly dense, complicated books about dragons, salt, and mercury. He is desperately searching for the Philosopher's Stone, which can turn any metal into gold, and the elixir of life, which cures all illnesses and stops aging.
So the Englishman is this very intellectual seeker. He mentions something called the Emerald Tablet, which is supposedly the most important text in all of alchemy. But what is it exactly?
In alchemical lore, the Emerald Tablet is the foundational text of their entire practice. It supposedly holds the secret of the soul of the world. And here's the irony. The text of the Emerald Tablet is so brief it can fit on the surface of a single jewel.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yet the Englishman relies on hundreds of confusing, heavy books to try and decipher it.
Okay, let's pause right there.
Hmm.
What exactly is the soul of the world in the context of this text?
It's described as the underlying interconnected web of everything. The idea that rocks, plants, animals, and human thoughts are all part of a single, continuous, breathing entity. When you desire something with all your heart, you are tapping into that soul. It's essentially the language of God or the universe.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. So you have Santiago and the Englishman, and they are essentially two people trying to learn this new language. The Englishman is obsessively reading dry, academic grammar textbooks in a dark room trying to memorize the rules of the universe. Meanwhile, Santiago threw away his book. He's just walking through the desert, observing the hawks and talking to the camels. He's learning by immersion.
Exactly.
But let me challenge this. If Santiago is just wandering around looking at birds, how does he actually learn anything compared to the guy studying the historical texts?
Yeah.
Like, which way is the right way?
Well, both men are seeking their personal legend, but they represent entirely different ways of interacting with reality. The Englishman believes knowledge is something you extract from formulas and past studies. Santiago is learning that true knowledge is something you experience by paying attention to the present moment.
So it's about observation.
Yes. The mechanism here is that the universe is constantly communicating, but it communicates through the present environment, not through dusty pages.
And the source material really drives this home through the character of the camel driver, right?
Yes, the camel driver offers a philosophy of profound acceptance. He tells Santiago a story about how he used to have a farm, an orchard, a family. He had a very stable, predictable life. But then the Nile flooded and he lost absolutely everything. The earth was destroyed. He had to become a camel driver just to survive.
Which sounds like a total tragedy, but the driver is completely at peace.
He is, because he teaches Santiago that the fear of losing what we have, whether it's our lives, our possessions, or loved ones, vanishes when we realize that our life story and the world's history are written by the same hand. He uses the Arabic word mektub, which translates to, "it is written."
Mkatabt. It is written.
The key, according to the camel driver, is living entirely in the present moment, unburdened by past losses or future anxieties. If you are constantly terrified of what might happen tomorrow, you simply cannot read the signs that are in front of you today. If you can stay in the present, life becomes a festival, a grand celebration, because life is solely the moment we are living right now.
That's a beautiful way to look at it. But just as Santiago is learning to be present, the universe throws the ultimate distraction his way. The caravan gets word a fierce tribal war is breaking out across the desert. So to avoid the slaughter, they halt at the Al Fayoum oasis. And just to paint a picture from the text, this isn't, a few trees and a puddle. This neutral zone contains 50,000 palm trees and 300 wells. It's a massive sanctuary.
And it is here, at one of those 300 wells, that Santiago faces his greatest test.
He meets a desert woman named Fatima. And the text describes this as a moment where time literally stops. Santiago instantly understands the purest part of the language of the world, which requires no explanation. It's love. He's completely captivated. In fact, he goes to her and says, "I want you to be my wife, I love you, and I am ready to abandon my treasure to stay here with you at the oasis."
He is ready to become the crystal merchant. He is ready to settle for the comfort of the present rather than the pursuit of his legend.
Now, I have to push back here, because walking away from this sounds insane. I mean, think about it in your own life. When you finally find something amazing in the real world, a great relationship, a perfect home, a job that actually fulfills you, it is so incredibly tempting to say, "I'm done, I've won, this is my treasure."
It's the ultimate comfort zone.
Yeah. So how does the source material justify Santiago walking away from a sure thing, from true love, For some unknown pyramids that might not even have actual treasure, is a personal legend just selfish ambition?
It's a brilliant dilemma, and it's not about selfish ambition at all. The text justifies it through the mechanics of true love itself. Fatima is a true woman of the desert. She doesn't ask him to stay. In fact, she insists he continue his journey.
Wait, really? She tells him to leave.
Yes, she tells him that the desert takes their men, but those men become part of the clouds, the animals, and the sand. She understands a fundamental law of this universe. True love will never, ever stand in the way of a personal legend.
Right. She says, if I am really a part of your dream, you'll come back one day.
Right. The underlying philosophy here is that true alignment with the universe doesn't force you to choose between love and purpose. If Santiago stays merely out of fear of losing Fatima, he isn't honoring his legend. Eventually, that fear and unfulfilled potential would turn into resentment, poisoning the love anyway. True love doesn't anchor you, it propels you.
It requires active courage to leave.
It does, and we see this mirrored in the Englishman, too. At the Oasis, the Englishman finally meets the actual alchemist he's been looking for. And what does the alchemist tell him to do? Go and try. The Englishman has spent 20 years paralyzed by the fear of failure, reading books instead of actually trying to turn lead into gold. He finally builds his oven in the desert. The journey requires action, not just passive comfort or theoretical study.
So Santiago commits to the journey. But before they can leave, he is sitting in the desert, and he experiences this sudden, intense vision. He is watching two hawks flying, and suddenly one dives at the other, and in that flash he sees an army riding into the oasis with swords drawn.
He is reading the signs. He has tapped into the soul of the world without the need for books or Urim and Thummim.
But the stakes are incredibly high. The oasis is supposed to be a neutral zone. No one brings weapons into an oasis. Santiago decides to warn the tribal chieftains anyway. They listen to him, and the elder recounts the biblical story of Joseph, another foreigner who interpreted the Pharaoh's dreams to save Egypt from famine. The chieftains agree to break tradition. They will arm their men to prepare for an attack.
But there is a deadly caveat to this decision.
Yes, the elder tells Santiago that weapons are fickle. If they are brought out, they must be used. So if the enemy attacks, they will be ready. But if the vision is wrong and no enemy appears, those weapons will be used on Santiago. He will be killed. Talk about skin in the game. It's one thing to read a sign in the clouds. It's another thing entirely to bet your actual life on it.
This is really the climax of his spiritual development in the source text, because reading signs isn't a passive parlor trick. That night, a terrifying figure appears to Santiago. It is a horseman dressed entirely in black, riding a massive white horse with a falcon on his shoulder and a huge curved sword. He demands to know who dared to read the flight of the hawks and change the fate of the desert.
And Santiago doesn't back down. He stands his ground. He accepts that if he dies for his personal legend, it is a worthy death.
And when he shows that ultimate lack of fear, the horseman stops. The blade is resting on Santiago's forehead, drawing a single drop of blood. But the horseman doesn't strike. He reveals himself to be the alchemist.
The alchemist was testing him. But why this specific test?
Well, the alchemist reveals the ultimate truth of their philosophy. Courage is the greatest virtue for anyone seeking the language of the world. But why is courage specifically the key? Why isn't intellect or patience the greatest virtue?
Right, why courage?
Because reading the signs requires complete presence. If you are afraid of the future or afraid of losing what you have, your fear acts like static. You project your anxieties onto the world rather than seeing what is actually there. Fear distorts the present moment. Without courage, you literally cannot accurately read the signs.
And the vision turns out to be entirely accurate. The next day, 500 enemy tribesmen attack the oasis. Because they were warned, the men of the oasis are ready. They kill 499 of the attackers, sparing only the commander to interrogate him. Santiago's vision saves the entire settlement, and as a reward, the alchemist officially agrees to guide him across the rest of the desert to the pyramids.
He has passed the test of the desert, the test of love, and the test of courage.
So we've covered a massive journey today, all the way from Andalusia to the Egyptian desert. But the core lessons from Coelho's text are incredibly practical for the reality you wake up to every day. First, beware of the world's greatest lie. Do not surrender your agency and believe that your life is just controlled by fate or societal expectations. You have a personal legend.
Second, you have to learn the language without words. You can't just read the grammar book in a dark room. You have to immerse yourself in the world, pay attention to the signs, and be present in the moment, just like the camel driver. If you are paralyzed by past losses or future anxieties, you will miss the opportunities right in front of you.
And finally, you have to ask yourself a really tough question. Are you acting like the crystal merchant? The greatest risk to your potential isn't failure. It's the comfort of the crystal merchant. It's using your dreams as a coping mechanism for a life you dislike, rather than a blueprint for the life you want. Ignoring that blessing will eventually turn it into a curse. You need the courage of the alchemist to actually step out and try.
Which brings us all the way back to the beginning, to the prologue we discussed. There is a profound final layer to this philosophy.
The story of Oscar Wilde's Narcissus.
Exactly. Remember, the lake wasn't weeping for Narcissus's beauty. The lake was weeping because it saw its own beauty reflected in Narcissus's eyes. If we apply that to the entire journey of the alchemist, well, it leaves us with a fascinating question to consider.
What if our pursuit of our personal legend, our ultimate treasure, isn't actually about us at all? What if, by courageously leaving our comfort zones, by risking everything to seek our destiny, we aren't just fulfilling our own desires? What if we are simply allowing the soul of the world to finally see a reflection of its own beauty through our actions?
It fundamentally changes why we take the journey in the first place.
It really does. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the source material. Until next time, keep reading the signs.